Hey, it's Anna Vaughn with Travel Mama Anna Vaughn, and today we're going to do a Q&A. I've been mining the old internerd for your questions, and thank you so much for sending in such great ones. I'm going to do my best to answer them out here with the birds today. Before we get started, if you like this video, like it. If you want to share it, that's cool. Subscribe, hit the bell, get notified when we upload, and please leave any comments you have on my answers here in the comments below. First up, what do we got here? These are from Instagram. So from Reina La Reina, how have your views on traveling changed from before having a kid versus after? So I think this was a really great question. I think that there's a lot of things that I viewed before having a child as annoyances while traveling that now are actually kind of fun. One of them being long layovers. I used to be like, traveling, from one destination to another where there's a long flight and then a big layover and then a second flight, like for instance from Canada to Bali. And that felt long, and I would be inside my head, and I would watch 10,000 movies, and I would be bored, and I would want to sleep, and it just felt like time went on forever. I've done that trip 4 times with Luna, so there and back twice, and it's great. Layovers with kids, so much better. You've got someone to hang out with, someone to take care of. It makes the time pass faster. And also, kids just make kind of mundane things more fun. So that's definitely different. Also, I pay more attention to things like how much destruction we're doing to the world environmentally now. I didn't pay as much attention before. I always was mindful, but now I'm really starting to worry that a lot of places won't be there for my daughter to enjoy when she gets older. I worry a lot about, I'm somebody's hero and I'm somebody's mentor and I'm someone's example now, and that weighs on me heavier for sure. And then I think the third way that things have changed is that I plan a lot more. So, and I don't mean like, when people plan all their trips and everything in advance using the internet. I mean like, I write to the place we're gonna stay in advance and say, hi, I'm coming with a kid. I introduce myself, I ask them questions. I think more about things like, is there anything to do for families there? Are there locals? Like, I'm much more locally minded because a lot of the travel industry is for people that don't have children and are sometimes in more of like a party mode type of life, and that doesn't work for kids. So I plan a bit more in advance. I pay attention more to the details of where we're going. Okay, well, while we're on the topic of travel, I got a great one from Jessica Lelio. She said, what age did you start traveling and where? And what are your tips on getting started? Well, the first time I took a plane by myself, I was 4 years old. I was going from my mother to my father across the country in Canada. And I continued to do that solo trip twice a year until I was 17. So I traveled really, really young. When I was 18, I moved to New York by myself. I lived in Manhattan and I went to FIT, the Fashion Institute of Technology there. That was in like 1997. So I guess that was the first place I went. And I wanted to go to New York because I was from a city and I was like, bigger is better. And I really suffered from this thing that Torontonians had in the 90s, where there was a lot of compare and despair. Like, Torontonians were always like, am I enough? Are we as good as New York? That kind of thing. And I was always looking to New York as the cooler place to be. So I wanted to be there. My tips for people who are starting out, women traveling on their own, is go to Asia. Start in Asia. I know it seems far afoot, but it's really safe and easy for women to get around. It's just really tricked out. And if that seems too far for you, you can always start in your backyard. Nothing is wrong with taking a weekend trip in your own country, your own state, just going, to the next city over and checking it out for a weekend by yourself. You can always start really, really small. But if you're looking for a foreign country that's great, Asia's pretty bitchin'. And it's very affordable if you stay in Southeast Asia, so Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Indonesia, Bali, obviously, Philippines. all in there. Singapore, well, Singapore's a bit expensive, but they're all affordable, easy to get around, well-worn paths for travel, very, very easy. And also just, yeah, it's a great starting point, because once you do Asia, you can do anywhere. Here's a really great follow-up question. It's from Carrie A. Dobbins, and she says, where do you want to go next? As in, like, what's on my list? So, I've got like a dream list, of course. I think everybody has their, like, where would you go if money was no object? And I'd really love to just spend, 6 months just traveling through Africa. That's like super goals. My like dream trips, some of them are like, they may never happen. Like one of my real dream trips is to go along, I guess what is the Silk Road, from Turkey down through into India. So you would go through Afghanistan, Pakistan, and into India from Turkey. I think that it's possible I'll be able to do that trip one day, but right now it's probably not a good idea. I'd love, like that whole area in there, I would love to see more of that. I'm not super interested in like big, like everyone's like going to the Philippines now. I would love to go to the Philippines, like don't get me wrong, but I'm not that interested in the places that are really trendy. There's more like trips I'd love to do. I've heard that, the Siberian Railway that goes through Russia is supposed to be really lovely. That's something I'd love to do. Obviously like Russia, Himalayas, Nepal, amazing. These are the types of trips that really like change who you are and show you the world through a different lens. And now I think at this point, the majority of the trips I want to take are those type, are like the life-changing ones. And there's not enough time, I think, to do them all. But maybe when I retire in my 60s and Luna's out of the house, I'll get, who knows, maybe, Pakistan and Afghanistan will be in a different place then. They certainly were, 30 years ago. So I don't see why they won't be somewhere different in 25, And it's totally possible that I'll get to do that trip in this lifetime. Jenny Lavidimora asked me, what are my minimalist tips and what are my splurges? So anyone who knows me knows I'm very minimal. The things I splurge on, I'm just gonna actually show you behind me, are plants. It doesn't look like it, but I've spent so much money on this garden, and I just am like, here, always putting more plants in. So that's a big splurge for me. Like, you'll never give me a price on a bunch of plants that I'll go, oh, that's too much. Like I always go for the plants. My minimalist tips are, I don't know, I've just always been very minimal because I hate mess and I hate clutter. It makes me feel cluttered internally. I've always been someone that wakes up in the morning and makes my bed every day. I've always been very neat and tidy. I love the idea of traveling with like one tank top, one t-shirt. I like the idea of a capsule wardrobe, of having everything kind of goes together. I like taking the thinking out of it. Something I have always done is I've always had shelves that are exposed, and it stops you from buying too many knickknacks and hiding them away. We also have a house with no closets, as in there's one in each bedroom and that's it. So that is the entire closet space for the entire home. There is no linen closet, no extra space, nothing. So that keeps us from buying extra things, which I love. So yeah, those two things really help, not having any storage. And also, I've always traveled a lot, so I've always had to carry what I need, and having to carry it sure cuts it down. Finally, we're always purging, we're always culling. The other day, on the weekend, I just went through all our clothes and I just took out the stuff that doesn't serve us anymore. And it was just a small pile of things, but if you do that once a month and it doesn't add up, I do the same with Luna's toys and books. Like she has 3 baskets and she's only allowed to have as many toys and books and art supplies that fit in those 3 baskets. And when it overspills, then we give stuff away, and that's it. I just try to practice non-attachment. But yeah, I do splurge. The things I splurge on is like, I'll always splurge on good food. So we eat a lot of high quality, local organic food. I never even look at the price when I'm buying food, as long as it's like really high quality. Restaurants, plants, and travel, experiences, things that I'm gonna keep with me forever. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Okay, also from Instagram, Echo wrote, who are your role models now and who were your role models earlier when you were younger? It's a really hard question to answer because on the one hand, I have so many people I look up to, but on the other, I actually felt that there was very few role models for me growing up, which is something that many women report. Like on the one, like obviously my mother was a role model. She's an entrepreneur. She's a decorated feminist and politician in Canada, and now she's a justice of the peace, and she's always kind of had a lot of projects for women and children throughout Canada that are recognized and well known. And so I always had her. I would say that was like my main role model growing up. But in my business, I never did feel like I had any mentors, and I actually was very envious that my male counterparts, they always had like the boys club, and like men always mentored. Older men would mentor younger men and kind of pull them along, and I just didn't have any. I had the only all-female promo company in Canada. We didn't have any. I didn't have any female mentors further down the line for me, and I found that women in their 30s kind of dropped off from my industry because as soon as they got married and had kids, they weren't in nightclubs anymore. Surprise, surprise. And now I would say I have more mentors now. Becoming a single mom really opened it up. Amoya, who runs Trip and Mama, Momdrogenous, Jasmine from Momdrogenous, who I just interviewed for the Patreon channel. They're both mom goals for me. There's a bunch. There's a bunch of like single traveling moms that I've met all over the world that are just like killing it, and I really look up to them. And also I love the comeback story. The people like, someone who's famous is like Sierra, who had a baby with Future, that didn't go so well, and then she came back like better than ever, Her career is better than ever. She met her current husband. They have a second baby. She looks fantastic. She sounds great. These women that have really like come through the darkness of being abandoned at their most vulnerable point in life and having to not just come back and survive, but also thrive, and they did it in the public eye. Like I can't even imagine, someone like Khalees, who is doing great, who has the career she's always wanted, who is married with another kid as well, who's, financially doing well, spiritually, emotionally, she's doing better than ever. She had that long, awful public break from Nas where he just like dragged her through the mud, he's still doing it to this day. And, we're living in a world where it's acceptable for men to do that, and it's not acceptable for women to defend themselves. And Khalees had to pick her career up and start over in the midst of all that and never said a word. And how she had the strength to just thrive through that is way beyond me. And so I look at, there's a lot of women out there now that are single moms that are doing amazing, that have literally had, usually men, although other women too, like try to pull them down at every single step, and they've just like gracefully walked through the fire. And I look at those women and think like, well, shit, if Khalees can do it in front of everyone, the whole world watching, I certainly can do it, with just like a few small-minded people on the internet making opinions, So that's that question. Okay, this one I think is really great. It's from Sweet Fairy Baskets, and I believe it's a woman. She asks, she says, living in a small city, what are the pros and cons, and do you ever wish you were in a big city? And when I read it, I thought, oh my gosh, she thinks Puerto Escondido is a city? So Puerto Escondido is only 45,000 people, and I am constantly reminding myself that it's not even 50,000 people, that it's really a small town, and to have small town expectations. It's not a major tourist hub like Huatulco, which is only 5,000 people more, but has a lot more bank machines, And that's what I love about living here, is that it is a little harder to get to. It's a little harder to get around. They don't make it as easy for foreigners, and that's what keeps out all the like bloated tourist industry stuff that I don't want in my life. So I'm always reminding myself of those facts. some of the things that are really hard about living in a small town at the beach is that, like, the beach is it, man. Like, you better like sunsets on the beach because that's all you're getting 365 days a year. You better like swimming, you know, snorkeling, surfing, because that's all there is to do. Like, it's over for you. Like, film festivals, nope. You know, art shows, nope. A lot of things that they have in cities are not present here. But that's the difference between cities and small towns all over the world. You know, small towns at the beach in, you know, the United States are also not as tricked out as big cities are. And one of the things that I do want to say about Puerto is that it's only an hour flight from Mexico City. And, you know, I regularly get flights for about 1,000 pesos, which is about 50 American dollars each way. So, you know, it's $100 to fly to Mexico City whenever I want to. And there's always deals. I got a deal to go to Merida for each of us for about just a little bit more to go to Merida. And there's a direct flight to Guadalajara, which is an amazing city. And you can always take an overnight bus into Oaxaca, which is a small city, but it's still a really great one. So there's plenty to see and do if I want to go to a city. And to be honest, I actually get tired there more quickly. So like a weekend a month, I don't actually go to the city that much, but in an ideal world, a weekend or 3 days a month in a city would be all I need, because the sort of the laid back, no drama, chilled out, family friendly vibe of Puerto Escondido at the beach is a lot more fun than what I gave up giving up the city. You know, I gained more than I lost, for sure. Okay, so from YouTube, I also got some questions. Most of them I answered in the live because it was kind of a back and forth, but there was a couple I wanted to highlight here. The first one's from Edward, let's see if I get this right, Edward Casimir, and he asked, if the superhighway does get built, is it going to affect life in Puerto Escondido in a negative way? Okay, so let me just shed a little light on this. So they've been building, air quotes here, heavy air quotes, they've been building a highway from Oaxaca City into Puerto Escondido. They've been talking about it for a long time, and they've been threatening to build it for a long time. You know, they're always talking about how it will be done in a year or 2 years. And this conversation has been going on for a decade. I don't think they're going to build it very fast, but they are doing it. So the road from Oaxaca to Puerto Escondido is also known as the trucks that go out there, like there's colectivos you can go in about 6 hours, and they call it the vomit comet, because it's just turns. It's turns for 6 hours. It's so bad that everybody has to take anti-vomiting medication. You can't sleep on it. You can't look away. You can't look at a device. You can't do anything like that. You just have to focus on the horizon and try not to barf the whole time. That's it. You can also do an overnight bus where they go down to Huatulco and up a different way, which is much less curves. So that road goes around a lot of mountains. That's why it's like that. They're trying to build a superhighway through that's going to be a lot straighter, a lot more tricked out. I do believe they will get this thing built. Is it going to be in 2 years, or is it going to be in another decade? I'm not sure. They're also threatening to build an international airport here and have that done in 2 years. Although when I first heard that story, I was like, 2 years? Nothing happens here in 2 years. An international airport is a lot more scary to me, because it means that there's going to be these like cheap sell-off flights from Canada and the US down here. And what happens when you get cheap flights from Canada and the US is that it opens it up for anybody to travel, and anybody means, you know, a lot of rednecks. It means that people from small towns who've never been anywhere, who don't speak Spanish, that don't like spicy food, that can't swim very well, you know, are not really respectful of the culture, can also come down here, as well as people that have traveled a lot. It's like it opens it to everyone. And once it's open to everyone, it's like, you know, it becomes kind of a fast food thing, and we all know the quality of fast food is pretty low. So an international airport scares me a lot more than a superhighway. A superhighway means that there's going to be a lot more people coming in from Oaxaca. Well, there's a lot of people coming in from Oaxaca anyway. That's the mentality of Oaxaqueños coming in their own state to the beach is a lot more gentle and respectful, since they're in their own backyard, than the attitude of people coming from outside. And that's just the reality. Like, I do not want to be Huatulco at all, you know, and I don't want to be Playa del Carmen. I don't want to be any of those places. I think that sentiment is pretty true here. What's fantastic about Puerto is that the average person that comes here is somebody that's traveled a little bit more, knows a little bit more about the world, is a lot more gracious, a lot more curious, a lot more open to the destination, and less scared, less needing the destination to bend to their whims. There's a lot more urban people that come down here. So people from Mexico City, Oaxaca City, you know, I meet people from Toronto, Montreal. I meet a lot more city people here, and a lot less like sort of sheltered, small town, narrow-minded people. I'm not saying that everyone from a small town is narrow-minded. I live in a small town filled with people that are not narrow-minded. But I don't know, I just think that, you know, when the flight's really cheap, the customer is also cheap, you know, and that's just how it goes. So I'm not scared about the Superhighway. I actually did meet a guy who's down here surveying for the Superhighway. So it is real, it is happening, but who knows when it will get built. And I think like we'll deal with it when it gets here. You know, it's quite possible that we'll be selling the house and moving somewhere. But luckily, I live in a very untouristed neighborhood, so I think our life will probably remain the same either way. It'll just mean that we'll get to zip off to, you know, Oaxaca City for the weekend much easier. Okay, and so the last question is also from YouTube. It's from Argenta Colca, and they want to know, does Luna speak Spanish? Do I speak to her in Spanish? And do I speak Spanish? And my answer to that is, pues sí, ella es mexicana y habla español. Por cierto, 100%. Ella habla español totalmente a escuela todavía, pero a la casa ella habla en inglés conmigo. So with me, she speaks English, and the reason for that is we're surrounded by Spanish. We speak English at home. We did travel for a year mostly to Asia, where we spoke English full time, and her English is better than her Spanish at present. But Kids Club is in Spanish. You know, I mean, we live in Mexico. She's hearing Spanish and learning Spanish and speaking Spanish. She has her best friend Reggie is a native Spanish speaker. Her mother and I converse in Spanish. You know, we definitely speak a lot of Spanish here. I speak to her a little bit in Spanish, but mostly she speaks to me in English. Like, I'm her English person. So that's usually how it goes when you have a parent in the home that speaks a different language than the language that's used every day, like whether they're you know, speaking an Asian language or whether they're Italian or whatever, you know. If Luna had a second parent that spoke a different language other than Spanish, she'd be speaking that one too in the home, because of course the more languages the better. I do have concern that she's going to learn Spanish as her second language because the English is stronger from that year in Asia, and it does worry me because when they're this young, they can actually have 2 maternal languages. So they can have 2 first languages. And the beauty of a first language is that you can think in that language. So if we play these cards right, she'll be Spanish and English speaking equally, which means that when she's speaking Spanish, she'll be able to think in Spanish, and when she's speaking English, she'll be able to think in English, rather than have her mind rapidly translate from her maternal language into the other. And that is a serious gift, and it's something that can't be learned later in life. So it is my hope that she is fully bilingual right down to the core. Hasta la muerte. Anyway, thank you so much for these questions. I actually love these. I can't say how much. Like, our fans are so smart, and you guys send me such great mail all the time with questions, and also lots of really good tips and tricks and advice. And I always just think, like, we're so lucky to have this community here online who are, you know, smart and paying attention and just really great people. Like, the majority of the people that watch our channel are people that I would love to go for a coffee with. So thanks so much, guys. Thanks for being really great yourselves. Again, if you like it, share it with a friend, subscribe, and feel free to click that little bell. Find out when we're uploading. Adios, baby.